Hello there, I'm Callum Johns, and welcome to another Expanded Universe novel review. If you haven't seen the others, just welcome to an Expanded Universe novel review by me, Callum Johns. Now, today I'm going to be talking about Razor's Edge, Empire and Rebellion by Martha Wells. And I'm going to just start with my points and just say my overall feelings at the end. So, away we go. So, the first thing was that they separated Han from Chewbacca and the Falcon. And I thought this was odd. Especially since in my last review of Splinter of the Mind's Eye I said that Han and Chewie seemed to be a package deal from not being in Splinter of the Mind's Eye. So maybe Han was just off doing another job or something as a smuggler, and that'd work. And yeah, I think Arnott Station is a new addition. Now I think I noted this down because this novel, I'll just double check here. What have we got here? Yeah, it was published in 2013. So it was one of those later novels just before the reboot that you wouldn't think as many new additions to places and everything would be there, but they are. So there we go. So, I thought the introduction of Alderani and gunship patrols was interesting, and that it would actually lead to a lot of different pathways between the different Alderaanian survivors going different paths. And I think it's good that they had this variety compared to earlier on in Rebel Force. They mentioned Alderaanian survivors just being in one place, which it's good that there's a variety rather than just, oh, everyone went here. So, yeah. I think the plot of the Alderaanians in this Alderaanian gunship patrol is interesting, and I won't spoil too much, so I'll just say that it's interesting. And I think that it's interesting how it just mentions the part about Leia just being a figurehead straight on. It just asks her about it, and she says about it, especially given her actions in it. And amongst everything, it's cool to see Leia's political manoeuvring still present amongst this, because they tackle the part about the figurehead, but then they also have the political manoeuvring in it, which we expect to see from Leia from being in the Senate. Now, the asteroid pirate base is a decent idea, but I feel like asteroid bases have been done before. Maybe not in Star Wars as much, but in science fiction in general, asteroid bases have been done a fair bit. And maybe that's from me more recently reading Ready Player One as well, where the main character has an asteroid base. So, Death Dice is a game that is mentioned, but apparently it's only mentioned in Jedi Starfighter before, the video game, when I looked it up on Wikipedia. So I don't actually know what's involved with it, because I thought, oh, Death Dice, I'll look up the rules to that and see what there is about it, and there isn't anything, so I don't know. It was something that could be expanded upon, probably. And here's where I come to where they introduce one of the, I'd say one of the most badass looking female villains in the expanded universe. It's Aral Viest, as I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, or it's Aral Viest. She looks like a badass from her description. You can read her description, got a scar and everything. It's pretty badass and cool, and it'd be cool to see her someone actually do a fan art of her, so that'd be awesome. I thought the species called the Lordians, I wonder if that's a reference to Billy Lord, Carrie Fisher's daughter. I didn't think of that before. I thought that was interesting that they developed language without speech, and it's all telepathy, which is really interesting. And those that aren't Lordians that can't do that just have to read the body language. So it's really interesting, and I also didn't know that before. And Lataki in this novel seem similar in their description to Quarrens. So I don't know why they didn't just use Quarrens instead of creating a new alien species. And there's a new alien species called the Ashori also introduced, which is interesting. And here's another good bit where they actually have an advancement on prosthetics. So they actually just have a prosthetic to say if you've got part of your fingers chopped off, they have a prosthetic to cover and give you new fingers, which I thought was really interesting, and I think it's the first time I've actually seen it used, because usually in Star Wars your whole hand's lopped off, and so they replace the whole hand or arm rather than just a couple of fingers. And I think the first Empire point of view is a bit odd, because it's sort of, you've gone so far into the book from the rebellion perspective that you go into an Empire point of view, and it's a bit odd. It's a bit jarring going straight from a rebel point of view into an Empire point of view. And yeah, a thing I thought was a bit funny was the 3PO translations for Chewbacca, because he's talking about how Chewie's being really rude and everything, he doesn't want to repeat it, which is pretty funny. And I think it actually agrees with the droid's programming to say these things, because as a protocol droid, you'd be trained for programmed for protocol, and so not want to be swearing and all that, because that's not proper protocol. The insight into Han's thoughts with Leia are interesting, so when they're in the same room together and that. Although at the time it just switches to it and out, and it's a little tricky to figure out whose point of view I'm reading from just at the time that happens. It might be a little thing, but it just sort of switches in and out without much leading into it. And Han shows more signs of becoming the general post he does in, well, they call him General Solo in Return of the Jedi, but more so post Return of the Jedi, because I've read a bit past that before, so I know a little bit. So you see the character development of Han coming along a bit. And there's a really brutal death in it that I wasn't expecting to read in this novel. And I wasn't expecting it, if this was a movie, to go into the R ratings, or at least the MA15+. Because it's got a really brutal death. I'll leave you with it. I'll read the scene out at the end of the video. It'll be cool. And I think it has varying gravity on the pirate base asteroid, and the pirate base, it's an asteroid. But it's hard to tell how much gravity they actually have. Like, it says there's lighter gravity, but does that mean there's zero gravity, or does that mean it's just a bit lighter so it's easier to walk? Now, some parts, obviously, it's pretty much zero gravity because they float along, but it doesn't really say that in the actual novel. Also, as a last sort of point before I go to a couple of last bits I'll read out, is this book actually adds a bunch of great female characters. There's a couple of extra female characters that add on the rebellion side as well that I think are pretty good. They're sort of side characters. Nothing especially stood out to me about them, but most of them around on the mission were actually a good mix of male and female, and the females actually, because we want to support this agenda of strong female characters, at least they seem to. I'll praise them for good female characters in Razor's Edge. There's a couple of extra continuity things as well, like Harmstein was developed as a character a lot compared to back in Choices of One, and maybe even Honor Among Thieves as a character, which is good because you want to see a bit of progression in that time span, because it's a couple of years in that. And in Ruins of Dantooine, it's noted that Leia has her hair in the braids that we see in The Empire Strikes Back. Oh, the pussycat joined me. Look! Oh, pussycat! And it's noted that Leia has her hair... So, yeah, in Ruins of Dantooine, it's noted that Leia has her hair in the braids we see in Empire Strikes Back. In Splinter of the Mind's Eye, she went back to her buns from A New Hope. But now in Razor's Edge, she has gone back to the braids from Empire Strikes Back. So, minor details. I guess she just likes changing her hairstyle. And overall, I really enjoyed the book. Although, by the end, the plot doesn't seem really relevant to the overall rebellion. They go to get building parts for Hoth at the start of the book. But then it ends up that they don't end up with any of it, so it's like, what's the point? Spoiler alert. Not that it'll make much difference when you're reading it, because I think that as you read it, if it's still a good book, it'll be good. And the last bit I'll read is Leia's using a fake name, but there's actually a role reversal. She says, "Hello, I'm Leia Durain. We're here to rescue you." So that's a little bit of a role reversal where Leia takes on the role of Luke, because Luke says pretty much the same thing when he goes in to rescue her at the Death Star. And now, this really brutal death, which I've just got to read out because it's pretty awesome. So she, Vice or VS, drew something from a holster. It was too thin for a vibroblade, but she pressed something on the handle and Harm felt a faint sonic hum that made the bones in his ears vibrate and his back teeth ache. It wasn't a knife. It was some kind of sonic probe. Maybe something meant for mining, for testing for mineral traces, which meant it had to be able to pierce solid rock. ... She stepped forward as Janlin tried desperately to twist away, her expression completely opaque. She gripped his hair and slid the probe into his shoulder. It passed through his clothing as if he were passing through air. Janlin shuddered once, his expression confused, eyes wide, as if something was happening to his body and he had no way to process it. Then he made a wet, choking sound. Blood ran from his mouth, and his skull just collapsed. Just like that. Harm flinched as the body fell into a heap. Nothing left of the head but a steaming ruin. Yeah, it's really brutal. I didn't expect that. So, yeah, I did enjoy that brutal death, I've got to say. It was really cool, just how it came about. And I think it's worth a read even if it doesn't feel relevant. And, yeah, have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.